I hope you're all okay and all good. Welcome to another video. My name is George. For those of you who don't know, feel free to subscribe down below if you're not already. And this is my January wrap up. Yeah, I'm recording this 10 days into February. And what? I can't get my angle right on this video. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry. It looks weird to me in the screen. I don't know what's happening. We're just gonna make it work. I was lucky enough to read 7? Is it 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I was lucky enough to read 7 really great books in January. And I know I don't normally do monthly wrap-ups because normally I don't read enough. Well, last year I wasn't really reading enough in a month to do that. I was just kind of doing wrap-ups as and when. But I read 7 really great books in January. So we're going to talk about them. Some of these books were gifted. I will signpost that where relevant because I want to be completely transparent. No one has asked me to talk about these books, by the way. I'm talking about them of my own accord because I want to, because I feel the need to share them with your beautiful selves. All links to the books mentioned in this video will be left in the description box below as ever. So if you want to go and check those out, you can if you go and look down there. Haha. The first book that I read in January was This Can Never Not Be Real by Sera Milano. This was sent to me by Egmont Electric Monkey Books in exchange for a review, a quote, something like that. It wasn't what I originally intended to read in January. I think I mentioned this in a writing vlog possibly, where I was talking about like what I was reading at the time, and I'd not intended to read this, but because they sent it across and because I worked with Sera on her middle grade books. Are they behind me? You can't see them. I've worked with her on her middle grade books, Boy Meets Hamster and Boy Meets School, when I worked in publishing. So I really wanted to read this. I really wanted to see what this was like. This Can Never Not Be Real comes out in April. It was originally meant to be March, but they changed the date to April because the world. It is set in the small town of Amberside where nothing really happens. They are having a firework festival in the autumn time and suddenly someone starts shooting. There is mass panic, people running for their lives, and this story is told from 5 perspectives. I think it was 5 in the end, 5 perspectives, with some intercutting things here and there at the inquest for this tragic event. It is a young adult thriller. It was very much heart in your mouth kind of stuff right from the get-go. You didn't really get a chance to breathe. You pretty much went straight into it, and it was kind of incredible for that. I wasn't really expecting it to like dive straight into everything. I wasn't really expecting it to be written like that either. I didn't know a lot about the book beyond like the blurb going into it, so kind of having it written, you can kind of see it sort of jumps perspectives like really frequently, and so because it does that, it means you're never with one person for more than a page, so you're sort of jumping in and out of people's heads into the different places where they are while all this is going on, while they're telling this story. It is heart in your mouth, compelling stuff. The best way that I can describe this book is sort of like a fugue in musical theatre. I think it's pronounced fugue. It's spelt like this. I think that's how it's pronounced. But when you have oh, hello, son. Oh my God, I'm so distracted. I'm sorry. When you have like several different people singing different lines, different melody lines, and they all come together to create this beautiful thing. It was very that. So like the only example I can think of, because it's one that I did, is Now Later Soon from A Little Night Music, where they're all just singing these different lines and eventually they all come together to create this great big melodic thing. It's like that. That's the only way I can describe it in terms of the way that it's written. All of these perspectives come together to create this thing. It's brilliant. It's absolutely astonishingly good, and I pretty much couldn't put it down. I read it really fast. As someone who like didn't read a huge amount last year, I raced through this. It was absolutely brilliant. So that comes out in April. The next book that I read is Here the Whole Time by Vitor. This is another book that was gifted to me. It was gifted to me by Bookmark, by Hachette Children's Books, by Team Bookmark. They have not asked me to talk about this book at all, but I'm going to, because it was great. This book is already out. It came out in the UK in January. It came out in the US a little while before that. It is the story of a fat teenager called Philippe who is really looking forward to spending his winter break away from all the bullies at school, away from all the people that make his life a living hell. That is until his mum tells him that the neighbour kid from apartment 57, Kaio, is going to be coming over to stay with them while his parents are away. Philippe has fancied Kaio pretty much since they were kids playing mermaids in the swimming pool of the apartment complex that they both live in, and hijinks ensues. I love this book so much. I loved the whole reading experience. I loved the entire vibe that the book was giving off. I so loved being in Philippe's head. He was so honest about all of these things about what it's like to be a fat teenager. So many things that kind of resonated with me as someone who was heavier when I was growing up, as someone who still doesn't have a particularly good relationship with their body. His perception of the world is really, really compelling, apart from the part where he says that he doesn't like Little Mix and he doesn't like the sound of music. That part I did not agree with. That part nearly made me throw the book across the room because no. But it was so interesting to see the progression that he went on, the journey that he went on. I loved his mum. I loved the development of the relationship with him and Kaio. The book was just fantastic. I loved it so, so much. It was glorious and joyful and just, it was wonderful. And I'm really excited to see what Vitor Martins is going to write next, because it was a very, very happy book. Like, you have those books that just give you the happy feelings. This is one of those, and I absolutely loved it for that. The next book that I read was Punching the Air by Zoboi and Yusef Salaam. This book came out last September and actually was signposted to me by a Readable Life Instagrammer called Layla, whose feed is absolutely gorgeous. And I have credited them so many times and said, if you hadn't have mentioned this book, I probably wouldn't have known about it. So thank you for that, because it's absolutely amazing. Punching the Air is about 16-year-old Amal Shahid, who has been struggling to break through the biased system that is in place even at his diverse art school. When one night he is convicted of a crime that he did not commit, a situation of the phrase boys will be boys only applying when those boys are white, his entire future is upended and he ends up in prison. It threatens to tear him apart, and he finds refuge in his art and in creating things and the possibility that he can change his own story. This book was picked by Jordan, my lovely boyfriend. I literally told him the titles of the books that I was going to be reading like this month in January, and he just picked this one because he liked the title. I started reading it and I could already tell that the book was going to hit me quite hard. It's written in verse, which is something that I've really gotten into in the past year or so. Novels in verse I just find incredibly powerful. It's that same reason that I find this is going to be I'm going to go on a weird tangent for a minute, just go with me. That's kind of why I find picture books so compelling as well, because when you have a picture book, you have to tell a story with so few words, and that is really skillful to be able to do that. And it's that same thing that you have to do in a novel in verse. That's taking nothing away from novels that are written in prose, but like a novel in verse is a different kind of beast, and it's a different way to kind of put a story across. Anyway, I was honestly floored by this book. So much happened over the course of 400 pages, and the way that the verse is in the novel changes from beautiful and flowery to angry and fiery, and it just sort of jumps between these two things and everything in between it as well. It's image laden, and it shows us the spectrum of all of Amal's emotions that he is feeling while he is going through this thing, all of the knockbacks that he faces and the hope that he tries to find. It's so good. It really does, like, it's a massive gut punch of a book, and it's absolutely brilliant. I really, really recommend it. If you're into verse novels, it's one of the best ones I've read. It was absolutely astonishing. I don't think I'm going to be forgetting it anytime soon. So that. The next book that I read was First Day of My Life by Lisa Williamson. I've talked about this book a lot because I have had it for a really long time, because this was meant to come out last July, but they moved it to January 2020. So I've had the proof for a very long time, and I'm a bad person because I've not read it yet. Well, I have now, but I hadn't at the time. This was gifted to me by David Fickling Books. Again, they've not told me to talk about it or anything like that. I'm just sharing it with you because it's great. That's what this channel is for. This novel is told from three perspectives on a GCSE results day when a baby is stolen from a small town in Nottingham. Don't want to say too much more than that because it gives away too much of the plot. But let me tell you, this book left me shook. It is pacey as all heck. It rattles along through each of the perspectives. You kind of go through each one in turn, and then you sort of jump between the three towards the end as things start to kind of ramp up. It's brilliant. The amount of twists and turns in this book is kind of unbelievable. Like, you sort of get to a point when you feel like you know what's going on, and then something happens and you realize that you really, really don't. But none of it felt unbelievable. I know I just said the word unbelievable, but none of it felt like it was jumping the shark. All of it was in the realms of what could happen in this book, and it was just so good. Like, so good. See, not only does Lisa write these incredibly real, tangible teenage characters, she also puts them in these situations where you get to see them at their best and at their worst. And that's kind of what makes her books in general, this one in particular, I think it's my favourite I've had so far. Absolutely brilliant. I kind of knew I was going to love this book going into it because I'm a huge fan of Lisa's books generally, but what I got was something that was even better than I could have hoped for. It twists and turns in ways that I didn't expect and had me hooked right to the very end. It's funny, it's gripping, it's joyful, it's uplifting and hopeful, and somehow it manages to be all of these things at once. It's just brilliant. So that. The next book that I read was Every Little Piece of My Heart by Non Pratt. I've said this so many times in this channel, but a new Non Pratt book for me is an event. This book came out on August 6th and I've had it on my shelf for a really long time and I've just not gotten around to reading it yet. I feel like I needed to be in the right mood, and I was in the right mood in towards the end of last year because I wanted to read it before the end of last year and then I didn't, but I've read it now, so that's all that matters. So yes, let's do this. Every Little Piece of My Heart is the story of... how can I describe this? It's a story of a girl called Sophie who 5 months after her friend Freya disappears without a trace, receives a parcel from her. She opens it and it leads her to someone else, and then to someone else, and then to someone else, and then to someone else. Each of them uncovering a truth about Freya that no one else really knew. I feel like I'm describing the book really, really badly, but get into it. Slowly you are drip fed each of these characters. You meet them pretty much as Sophie meets them, as she kind of gives the parcel over to them. You sort of meet these people as you go along. More of these revelations kind of coming out about Freya as you go. Much like with This Can Never Not Be Real, even though this is a YA contemporary, you don't really get much of a chance to breathe or sit in the world for too long before you're thrown straight into the story. It sort of goes straight off at quite a pace and you just have to get into it and get on board. It's both a positive and a negative, but because you're learning so much about these characters as you go and learning so much about their relationship with Freya teaches you about them, it completely makes sense and it completely works for the way the story is structured. The characters are far from perfect, which is what makes them so appealing in this sense. Seeing all the ways that they interact, the different combinations that they have with one another is really, really interesting. They agree and disagree with each other in endless combinations, and that's what makes them as a group so interesting to spend time with. The slow drip feed of information that you get from these characters really, really worked for me. It kept me wanting to know more. It kept me turning the pages, and by the end, I really didn't want to let these characters go. I wanted to stay with them for as long as possible, which I think is the mark of an absolutely cracking book. So, another non-Pratt winner. Was I expecting anything less? No, I was expecting this to be absolutely amazing. And did she deliver? Yes, she did. Of course she did. It's non-bloody Pratt. The next book that I finished in January was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. I have expressed my huge amount of love for Elizabeth Acevedo in the last couple of videos because I read Clap When You Land and it absolutely blew my head off. It was amazing. I've been working my way through With the Fire on High as an audiobook for quite some time. I'm the kind of person who walks around listening to audiobooks. So the reason it took me so long to read this book is because I've not been walking around as much because the world is on fire. But I found myself when I was taking walks and when I was listening to this, I was walking for a little bit longer to just get an extra chapter in, just to read a little bit more of it, to listen to a little bit more of it, because I'm just so compelled by Elizabeth Acevedo's writing. It's so gorgeous. Just like with Clap When You Land, there are those turns of phrases and those sentences that just make you sort of stop and think, oh my god, you're good. With the Fire and High tells the story of a teen mum called Imani, who is a girl with cooking instincts and big dreams for her and her baby girl Emma. Oh God, no, what are you doing? She doesn't really know what she's going to do with her life, but then a culinary arts program opens up at her school and she realizes there's this whole world out there that she can experience and taste. There's a lot more going on in this book than that, but it's hard to kind of capture it in sort of like a log line, like a little pitch, but the book itself is gorgeous. The audiobook is read by Elizabeth Acevedo, which I really enjoyed. It was really great to hear it in her voice, and when I was finishing the audiobook, I remember stopping in the middle of the street and just thinking, good grief, that was a good book. It took me a while to get through because obviously I'm not walking about as much, but the fact that I was taking longer walks just to spend more time with this book, to spend more time in this world, tells you how good it is. I loved it. It was beautiful, and it being read by the author as well just made it all the sweeter. And the last book that I read in January was Killing Jericho by Will Harker. Will Harker is the crime pseudonym of Will Hussey, the author of Hideous Beauty, which is another book that I absolutely loved last year. Killing Jericho is the first in a series of thrillers about Scott Jericho, who is from a travelling background. He is a showman and a disgraced police officer who has just recently gotten out of prison. But he has been tempted back into the fold by a case that hits all too close to home. It is written in absolutely gorgeous prose. I'm friends with Bill, so I'd read bits and pieces of it, he'd sent me little chunks of it here and there, and I was really looking forward to reading it. It came out at the start of December, And the fact that I only got to it in January shows that I'm a very bad friend. But once I started reading it, I really didn't want to put it down. It's cliffhangery at the end of every single chapter. The story is so compelling that you just want to see where it's going. He's also a gay detective. I feel like I should have mentioned that at some point. You don't come across those very often, so to find one of those was kind of amazing. For Will to be writing one of those, kind of incredible. Want to find more of those if I can. The writing is gorgeous. The pace is dead on. It gives you just enough information while teasing you and making you keeping on turning those pages. I stayed up way too late to finish this book, and it was 100% worth it. Also, I would die for Harry Morehouse. And if you read the book, you will know why I would die for Harry Morehouse. It's an absolutely fantastic book. The second one comes out in March, I think, so I'm really, really looking forward to that. It's called Silencing the Dead. And yeah, I'm on a bit of a crime kick at the moment. So like, I'm sort of reading crime books, which is a weird place to be in, but I'm enjoying them. It's kind of like, I go from reading like a YA story, a YA romance, to reading about like grisly murders, and it's kind of whiplash, but it's kind of great. So these, along with the Fahrenheit and Killing Jericho, are the 7 books that I read in January. I'm kind of impressed that I managed to read that many books in January. As someone who's like not been reading loads recently, like in 2020, it was probably one of my like lowest book count reading years, apart from the year that I did my master's degree. So I'm quite impressed with myself for that, if I'm completely honest with you. I feel like I mentioned this in the previous thing. Some people really struggled in the first lockdown to get their reading mojo. Some people are struggling now. I seem to be the one. I struggled in the first one. I'm now back on it in a big way and sort of using it to distract myself from the horrors of the world. But I've read some absolute belters. I'll leave links to all of them in the description box below, so you can go and find out more about them. You can go and buy them if you want to. And I'll leave links to all of them in the description box below. But that is the end of this video. Feel free to let me know what you read in January. If you've read any of these, feel free to let me know about it. I'd love to have a chat with you about it in the comments. That's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget to put a thumb on it and subscribe down below if you want to see more. If you made it this far, feel free to leave me the purple heart emoji. Thank you very much. I love each and every one of your faces, and I'll speak to you as soon as I possibly can. Bye!